We're diving into a moment so intense that it still echoes through the halls of military history, which is analyzed over 2,000 years later. It's March 241 BCE, and a Carthaginian general named Hamilcar Barca, stationed on the island of Sicily, is planning his next move. Carthage has been locked in a brutal war with the Roman Republic for 23 long years. Though Rome has endured devastating losses, they strangely refuse to quit. Now, Carthage teeters on the edge of financial ruin, and Hamilcar knows it. But he's never lost a battle, and he's determined to drive the Romans off Sicilian soil or die trying. Then, suddenly, shocking orders arrive. He's told to cease all fighting. The Carthaginian navy, once the most feared in the world, has been utterly annihilated by the Romans. That devastating defeat breaks the will of Carthage's leaders back home. They're not warriors. They're businessmen at heart. And now they just want out. They order Hamilcar to negotiate the terms of surrender. Give the Romans whatever they want. Just end this already. Furious, Hamilcar refuses to meet the Romans. He's crushed by the idea that all those years of bloodshed and the sacrifices of his fallen men might have been for nothing. Instead, he sends a subordinate to handle the surrender. The treaty that comes back? Absolutely humiliating. The Romans want to cripple Carthage beyond recovery. They demand 3,200 silver talents, control over Sicily, and a promise that Carthage will never, ever declare war on Rome again. With no other option, Carthage signs the treaty, officially ending the First Punic War. But Hamilcar? He can't let it go. The shame of the agreement eats at him. And then things get even worse. Rome soon takes the islands of Sardinia and Corsica too, knowing Carthage is too weak to defend them. Every Roman betrayal hits Hamilcar like a personal insult. Rage grows within him, and he becomes obsessed with revenge. If the politicians in Carthage won't strike back, then he will. He vows to restore Carthaginian honor and bring Rome to its knees. He takes his 9-year-old son, Hannibal, to a temple of their god, Baal Hamon. There, he makes the boy swear a blood oath to never, under any circumstance, be a friend to Rome. Soon after, Hamilcar sails with his son to Spain, beginning a campaign to conquer the south. He swiftly takes control of silver mines to help pay Carthage's war debt. Then he sets out to build a new army. When local tribes resist recruitment, Hamilcar brings Hannibal into combat to give him first-hand experience. By night, he and his generals school the boy in war strategy and tactics. In Hamilcar's mind, Hannibal is destined to become Carthage's greatest warrior, one who will eventually lead the charge against Rome. Everything unfolds as planned. But before Hamilcar can launch his revenge campaign, disaster strikes. He's ambushed by Spanish tribes and tragically drowns in a river during the fight. Leadership of the Carthaginian forces passes to his son-in-law, Hasdrubal. But the true legacy of Hamilcar, the growing legend of young Hannibal Barca, continues. Hannibal becomes everything his father dreamed, a brilliant tactician, fearless warrior and charismatic commander. Over the next 8 years, Hannibal earns the undying loyalty of his father's army. Then, in 221 BCE, Hasdrubal is assassinated. The Carthaginian troops rally around Hannibal and unanimously elect him as their leader. Hardened by more than a decade of battle, Hannibal becomes the living embodiment of vengeance. And now, at last, the time has come to fulfill his father's dream. In 219 BCE, Hannibal takes his army and lays siege to Saguntum, a Roman allied city. Rome responds by sending an ambassador to Carthage, demanding Hannibal's surrender. The Carthaginian Senate boils with fury when the Roman walks in. The ambassador steps forward and declares, "I bring war and peace. Take whichever you please, whichever you prefer." "Then I choose war." And with those words, the rage of 23 years of Roman arrogance finally boils over. The Carthaginian senators rise from their seats and roar, "We accept it!" The Roman ambassador turns and exits, completely unaware that he's just unleashed the most dangerous enemy Rome will ever face in its 2,000-year history. A man so terrifying his name alone would haunt the nightmares of Romans for centuries. Rome acts fast. They send out 2 armies to confront Carthage. One, led by the consul Scipio, heading to Spain to intercept Hannibal, and the other, led by the consul Longus, sailing for Africa to strike Carthage directly. But pause for a second. This part's important. See, at this time, Rome is still a republic, governed by a senate and 2 elected consuls serving 1-year terms. But here's the twist. Those consuls are also Rome's top generals. So every army Hannibal fights from this point forward is led by one of the 2 presidents of Rome. Imagine modern-day presidents personally leading troops into battle. Wild, right? Scipio lands in southern Gaul, prepared to confront Hannibal. But he's stunned to find out Hannibal has already abandoned Spain. He does manage to engage part of Hannibal's cavalry near the Rhone River, but the rest of the Carthaginian army is already on the move, quickly marching east. Alarmed, Scipio rushes back to Italy, just in case Hannibal decides to do something insane, like try to cross the Alps. I mean, it's fall already. He wouldn't actually try that, would he? Hannibal has decided to cross the Alps. The journey is long and brutal. His war elephants, pack animals, and men die daily from the freezing cold and treacherous terrain. But after months of agony, Hannibal miraculously emerges on the other side. He's lost half his army to the elements, but he's got a plan. He knows the Celts of northern Italy hate the Romans too. His hope? As soon as they see him, they'll rush to join his cause. "Hey you're a Celt, right? Don't you hate the Romans? Join me, and let's crush them together." Get lost, pal. As I was saying, don't you hate the Romans? Join me, and we'll crush them together. Finally, some Celtic tribes come around and start joining Hannibal's ranks. With new allies and renewed strength, he begins his invasion of Italy. Scipio's worst fears come true. He quickly takes control of a fresh army in Italy and marches out to intercept Hannibal. Their forces finally clash near the Ticinus River. Both sides feel the weight of what's about to happen. For the first time in 23 years, Rome and Carthage, 2 superpowers, are about to battle once more. The clash begins when 2 small scouting parties cross paths in late November 218 BCE. Coincidentally, both Hannibal and Scipio had chosen to personally lead their scouting missions. They spot each other while on patrol. The 2 commanders quickly rally their men and prepare for a skirmish. Hannibal surveys the Roman scouts and immediately sees an advantage. His cavalry massively outnumbers them. Without hesitation, he orders a full charge. The Second Punic War has officially begun. Roman foot soldiers scramble to hurl javelins, but before their first volley even leaves their hands, Hannibal's cavalry slams into them at full speed. The Romans are completely overwhelmed. Hannibal's elite Numidian horsemen tear through them with expert precision. The Roman line collapses almost instantly. Soldiers scatter and flee in every direction. In the chaos, the consul, Scipio, is badly wounded and thrown from his horse. Scipio's 16-year-old son, Scipio the Younger, was stationed in the rear guard. When he sees his father collapse to the ground, instinct takes over. He charges through the chaos, slicing past waves of fleeing Roman soldiers, slashing through enemy cavalry, and reaches his injured father. He throws him onto his horse, rides back through enemy lines, and saves his life. The Battle of Ticinus, though small, leaves a massive impression. Hannibal's men now truly believe they can defeat the Romans. And the Romans? They're stunned by how skilled the Carthaginian forces are, especially the African cavalry. But the most significant shift happens with the Celts. Watching Hannibal dominate Rome lights a fire in them. Maybe, just maybe, this general from Carthage is the one who can finally liberate them. Word spreads fast across the northern tribes. One by one, Celtic warriors start arriving at Hannibal's camp, offering him the heads of Roman soldiers they've killed, pledging loyalty to his cause. Meanwhile, when Scipio first suspected Hannibal would cross the Alps, he sent urgent messages to his fellow consul, Longus. He begged him to ditch the African invasion and return to Italy. Eventually, Longus and his men arrive at Scipio's camp and are horrified to find their co-consul severely injured. Scipio warns him. "This Hannibal guy? He's not like anyone we've fought before. Winter is coming. We need to wait and strike in spring." But here's the political wrinkle. Remember, Roman consuls only serve one-year terms, and both Longus and Scipio are about to term out. That's bad news for Longus. He hasn't beaten Hannibal. He hasn't earned the glory he craves, and if he backs down now, the next consul gets all the fame. The thought of that makes Longus sick. So he ignores Scipio's warning and marches out to crush Hannibal himself. He folds Scipio's remaining troops into his army and begins hunting Hannibal. He finds the Carthaginians camped near the Trebia River. Hannibal sees the Romans setting up and immediately begins scouting the area for a perfect battlefield. While exploring, he finds a dried-up, weed-choked riverbed, and when he sees it, he grins. He returns to camp and tells his officers exactly what's about to happen. Longus has no idea what's coming. It's a freezing, pitch-black December morning. The wind screams across the landscape, sleet pelting everything in sight. The weather is miserable, which is exactly what Hannibal wants. Before dawn, he sends his Numidian cavalry across the river to attack the Roman camp in a hit-and-run raid. Longus, startled, springs from his tent and quickly scrambles his men. He orders his cavalry to respond, then personally rushes to lead the rest of the army. Hannibal's horsemen retreat across the river, and Longus, bleary-eyed but running on adrenaline, leads his entire army in hot pursuit. They splash across the icy river, soaked and freezing, and begin forming ranks on the opposite side. Longus commands around 40,000 troops that day. His line stretches nearly 2 miles. Just organizing them takes hours. And all the while, his men are dripping wet, trembling from the cold, their clothes stiff and frozen to their bodies. The cavalry, exhausted after chasing Hannibal's riders, limps into position at the flanks. The battle hasn't even started, but Rome is already at a disadvantage. The Carthaginians finally appear rested, warm, and covered in oil to guard against the cold. Hannibal arranges his troops for battle. In the center, he places his new Celtic allies, right across from Rome's veteran infantry. On each side of them, he stations his experienced Spanish and African troops. And then, anchoring both wings, Hannibal positions his last remaining war elephants and cavalry on the flanks. Longus looks out across the field and sees what appears to be a smaller Carthaginian force. He smiles. "All right, boys, we've got them right where we want them," he says, shivering. "It's freezing, but the time for glory has come." Longus orders the charge. His weary Roman cavalry ride out, but they're instantly crushed by Hannibal's elephants and swift horsemen. Then, with classic Roman bravado, Longus leads the infantry from the front and charges directly into the Celtic center. Despite their hunger, exhaustion, and frozen limbs, the Roman infantry fight like demons. They begin pushing the Celtic line back. Against the odds, they're gaining ground. Hannibal's cavalry, having already broken the Roman horsemen, now swing back to support the center. They smash into the Roman flanks. Still, Longus and his men keep pressing forward. They force the Celtic warriors to retreat, inch by inch. Though surrounded, the Romans believe they're on the brink of victory. "All right, boys, we've got them." Then the war cry is heard. From behind the Roman army, the roar of 2,000 elite Carthaginian soldiers fills the air. Led by Hannibal's younger brother Mago, they erupt from the dried-out riverbed Hannibal had discovered the day before. They had been hiding there all night. The sneak attack works perfectly. The Romans are completely surrounded. Hannibal's trap has sprung. With no choice, Longus yells for his soldiers to fight like hell. The Romans double down, hacking and clawing their way forward, and incredibly they break through the Celtic line in the center. The road to escape is open, but instead of circling around and striking the Carthaginians from behind, the Romans just keep running. They charge straight off the battlefield. No one is sure if Longus actually believed he had won, or if he simply wanted to survive. But he and thousands of his troops flee all the way to a nearby town and never return. The rest of the Roman army, caught in the trap, is slaughtered. Over 20,000 men are killed. Hannibal, meanwhile, replaces his losses almost immediately. Celtic warriors across the land now rush to join his army. Word of the epic victory spreads fast, and Longus, humiliated, limps back to his camp. He packs his things and races to Rome to tell his version of the story. According to him, he won the battle. Soon after, both Scipio and Longus finish their one-year terms. The Roman people elect 2 new consuls, one of whom is a man named Flaminius. Flaminius is known for 2 things. First, like Longus, he craves fame and recognition, and second, he built his entire career slaughtering and intimidating the Celtic tribes in northern Italy. You know, the same tribes now fighting with Hannibal. That's probably not going to end well. The 2 new consuls move their armies to the only 2 roads leading into southern Italy. The idea is simple. If Hannibal wants to march on Rome, he'll be forced to pass one of them. Because, obviously, no sane person would ever try to march through a nasty, disease-ridden swamp, right? Oh no. Yep, Hannibal does exactly that. He marches his army through the swamp. His men lose their boots, his animals drown, and Hannibal, he gets a massive eye infection. By the end of the swamp trek, he's lost one of his eyes. Now, in central Italy, in a region called Etruria, Hannibal begins torching Roman towns. Flaminius, stationed closer, races to intercept. He spots Hannibal camping near Lake Trasimene and sets up across the road. But Hannibal knows Flaminius is eager for a showdown. So, in the dead of night, he moves nearly his entire army up the wooded hills above the road and lake. He leaves just a small group behind to block the road and lies in wait. At dawn, Flaminius marches into the trap. Flaminius marches his army out, eager to strike Hannibal's camp. But thick fog has rolled in from the lake, blinding the Romans as they stumble along the narrow road. They can barely see their hands in front of their faces. Unbeknownst to them, Hannibal and his army are lying in wait, watching every step like predators tracking prey. The Roman column pushes forward in silence when suddenly, through the fog, a small formation of enemy infantry appears. Flaminius sees his moment. He gives the order to attack, and the front of the Roman line charges into the mist. But at the back, soldiers can only hear shouting and clashing steel. The fog is so dense they can't see what's happening. Confusion spreads. Then the ground begins to tremble beneath their feet. Horses, thousands of them. From every direction the sounds of war come crashing in, galloping hooves, roaring war cries, screams in the mist. Hannibal's trap has sprung. His men descend like ghosts through the fog. The Romans, stunned and blind, are attacked from all sides. They're stuck, squeezed onto a narrow road with the lake to their backs. Many panic and rush into the water, trying to swim for their lives, but their heavy armor pulls them under. Others wade into the lake until it's up to their necks, only to watch in terror as Carthaginian cavalry ride out and cut them down where they stand. The Roman army is completely surrounded, and to their horror, they realize they're badly outnumbered. Hannibal's Celtic allies have grown his forces to nearly 50,000 strong. In the chaos, Flaminius tries to rally his men. He shouts orders, trying to hold the line. But his voice cuts through the fog, and that's when the Celts hear him. They pause. They know that voice. They know him. It's Flaminius, the Roman who destroyed their homes, slaughtered their sons, and stole their daughters. And now he's standing right in front of them. "All right, boys, we've got them right where—" He's cut down before he can finish. With Flaminius dead, the Roman forces lose all leadership. The formation collapses. Soldiers scatter. But there's nowhere to run. Trapped between fog, blade, and lake, many are killed where they stand. In just a few hours, the waters of Lake Trasimene turn red with blood. It's a massacre. Nearly 30,000 Roman soldiers are killed or captured. Historians would later call this the largest ambush in military history. And for Rome, the loss is devastating. But what they don't know is that this horror wasn't even Hannibal's greatest move. That's still to come. Because if war was an art, then Hannibal's next battle would be his masterpiece. The news of the disaster at Lake Trasimene shakes Rome to its core. Panic spreads. Hannibal is no longer just a threat. He's the threat, a nightmare come to life. So in 217 BCE, Rome does something it hasn't done in over 140 years. They temporarily abandon the two-consul system and elect a dictator. One man to hold absolute control over the government and the army. That man is Fabius Maximus. Fabius is calm, calculating, and determined to save Rome. But the plan he proposes, nobody sees it coming. Instead of meeting Hannibal in open battle, Fabius does the opposite. He shadows Hannibal's army, attacking only when it's vulnerable, when his men are gathering supplies or spread too thin. And the second Hannibal turns to fight, Fabius retreats. He avoids every major battle. If Hannibal's army had a health bar, Fabius was draining it with little fireballs from a distance. This strategy would later become legendary, and even help General George Washington win the American Revolution. It's now known as the Fabian strategy. But back then, the Romans hated it. They saw it as weak, cowardly, dishonorable. To a Roman, nothing was worse than fleeing a fight. They mocked Fabius, called him the delayer. But no matter how much they hated it, his strategy was working. Hannibal's men were worn down. The constant harassment from Fabius had taken its toll. But as they tired, Rome was quietly rebuilding. Hannibal did everything he could to provoke Fabius into open battle, but the Roman dictator never took the bait. And by the time Fabius stepped down in late 217 BCE, Rome's military had become stronger than ever. 2 new consuls were elected, Paulus and Varro, and by now the Romans had endured the Fabian strategy as long as they could. They were tired of waiting. They wanted a fight. So Rome raised the largest army it had ever fielded, 86,000 men. The mood was electric. Everyone believed this would be the final blow. Even retired senators and ex-consuls begged to join. They didn't want to miss the fall of the monster from Africa. Paulus and Varro marched their enormous army toward Hannibal and found him camped near a supply depot called Cannae. When Hannibal saw the Roman army approach, he was stunned by its size. But then he realized maybe this was exactly the opportunity he'd been waiting for. If he could defeat a force this massive, the rest of Italy might finally rise up against Rome. He began crafting a battle plan so brilliant it would be studied for thousands of years to come. Through his scouts, Hannibal learned that Consul Varro was hot-headed, arrogant, and very eager to fight. The 2 consuls were taking turns commanding the army on alternating days, so Hannibal waited. He would only strike on a day when Varro was in charge. That day came on August 2nd, 216 BCE. Varro, tired of waiting, gave the order to deploy. He arranged the massive Roman army on a flat plain to the left of the Aufidus River. He placed the heavy Roman infantry in the center in a tight, deep column, intending to drive straight through Hannibal's army like a human battering ram. On the flanks, Paulus and Varro each took command of the cavalry. Hannibal studied the formation and carefully placed his forces in response. On the wings, he placed his cavalry opposite Rome's horsemen. In the center, he deployed his weakest troops, the Celts and Iberians, forming a wide outward bulge instead of a straight line. Behind them, he placed his best African infantry, dressed in the armor of fallen Roman soldiers from previous battles. And in the dead center, Hannibal and his brother Mago stood tall, side by side, ready to face the Roman tide. Then came the signal. The Roman column thundered forward, smashing into Hannibal's bulging center. The Celtic and Iberian line was slowly pushed inward. What had started as an outward curve was now caving in.
On the flanks, the cavalry clashed, and just like before, Hannibal's elite Numidian horsemen quickly overpowered the Roman riders. Paulus's flank was the first to collapse. He was thrown from his horse and injured, but managed to crawl into the infantry column to help command troops there. With their flank now free, Hannibal's cavalry swept around the battlefield and charged into Varro's side. Outnumbered and overwhelmed, Varro retreated with his remaining cavalry. leaving the Roman infantry completely exposed. Back in the center, the Romans were continuing to push. Their thick column was driving deeper into the Celtic line, and it seemed, for a brief moment, that victory might be in their grasp. But Hannibal had planned for this. As the Roman column pushed inward, it began to compress. Their soldiers were packed tightly together, shoulder to shoulder. The deeper they advanced, the less room they had to fight. The formation had turned from a blade into a bottle, easy to shatter, and that's when Hannibal gave the signal. His African infantry, who had been lying in wait behind the center, suddenly turned inward and attacked from both sides, slamming into the Roman flanks. Then Hannibal's cavalry swept in from behind. The Romans were surrounded. From all sides, Carthaginian swords and spears rained down. The tight Roman formation was now a trap. They couldn't run. They couldn't fight back. They couldn't even lift their arms. It was complete annihilation, and it was only just beginning. The Romans pressed harder, hammering into Hannibal's front line with increasing fury. The Celts were collapsing. One by one they fell, their formation buckling under the relentless Roman pressure. It looked like the line was about to break, but no one realized. This was exactly what Hannibal wanted. As the Roman infantry surged deeper into the center, they paid no attention to the Carthaginian heavy infantry standing calmly on both flanks. Maybe it was the fact they were wearing Roman armor from previous battles. Maybe it was the dust storm swirling through the battlefield that day. Or maybe the Romans were just too confident, believing they were seconds from victory. Whatever the reason, it was already too late. With a single command, Hannibal unleashed his trap. His elite African infantry, waiting silently on both sides, suddenly turned inward. They slammed into the flanks of the Roman column, squeezing them tighter and tighter. The formation was now so dense that Roman soldiers could no longer swing their swords. Their arms were pinned to their sides.
He would earn the trust of the Senate, the love of the people, and the respect of even Hannibal himself. He would become known as Scipio Africanus, the hero of Rome. And one day, he would do the impossible. He would defeat Hannibal Barca in battle.